The Jetsons promised you the future, and you believed every second of it. But what if I told you the show was actually warning you about something much darker? Which iconic scene is burned into your memory? George folding his car into a briefcase, Jane's push-button kitchen that did everything, or Astro's goofy loyalty? Were these predictions right, or terrifyingly wrong? The answer will disturb you more than you ever imagined. Number 1. The flying car lie everyone believed. Remember 1962? John F. Kennedy promised we'd reach the moon. Your dad dreamed of owning a Corvette, and the Jetsons showed us we'd all be flying to work by the year 2000. George Jetson's daily commute through sky traffic became the most iconic image of the future television ever created. Every morning, he'd fold his car into a briefcase and walk into spacely sprockets like it was the most normal thing in the world. We all believed it. But here's what they didn't tell you. The animators at Hanna-Barbera didn't invent flying cars from imagination. They copied them from real aerospace prototypes the military was testing in the late 1950s. Companies like Curtiss-Wright and Bell Aerosystems had actual plans for personal aircraft vehicles. The designs failed because of noise, safety, and fuel costs, but the drawings looked exactly like George's car. So the Jetsons didn't predict flying cars. They showed us the future that corporations already tried to build and abandoned. Your childhood dream was actually a corporate failure repackaged as Saturday morning hope. But that's not the strangest thing they hid from us about Orbit City. What they built those sky cities on top of will make you question everything. Number 2. The dark secret hiding below Orbit City. Those beautiful cities floating in the clouds. Remember how clean and perfect everything looked? The towers stretching endlessly into white, puffy skies, while George and Jane lived thousands of feet above the ground. It felt like heaven, didn't it? Like humanity finally escaped all its problems by just moving up. But Hanna-Barbera animators included something in the background that most kids never noticed. In several episodes, if you look carefully at the base of those towers, you can see a brown, polluted haze covering the Earth's surface. The ground level is dark, toxic, and completely uninhabitable. Orbit City wasn't built in the sky because technology was amazing. It was built there because humans destroyed the planet below and had no choice but to abandon it. This wasn't just background art. The writers confirmed in a 1985 interview that the Jetsons and the Flintstones existed in the same timeline. The Flintstones lived on the ruined surface after a nuclear apocalypse, while the Jetsons were the wealthy survivors who escaped upward. The show you watched every Saturday morning as a kid? It was actually a post-apocalyptic dystopia disguised as a comedy. And George's 1-hour workday? That wasn't progress. It was a warning. Number 3. Why George only worked 1 hour a day and why that terrified America. Picture this. It's 1962. Your grandfather is working 50-hour weeks at the factory. Union fights are everywhere. Americans are obsessed with one question. Will automation steal our jobs or free us? President Kennedy is telling the nation that technology will create a worker's paradise where machines do everything and humans live like kings. Then the Jetsons arrive. George Jetson, digital index operator, presses one button for 1 hour and calls it a full workday. He complains about being exhausted. Mr. Spacely still screams at him. Nothing actually gets easier. Here's what they hid. The show's creator, William Hanna, admitted years later that George's job was deliberately meaningless. The writers were mocking the futurist fantasy. They knew automation wouldn't free workers. It would just replace purpose with pointless busywork. George pushes a button because the machine does all the thinking. He's not living in paradise. He's been made obsolete, but still has to show up and pretend his existence matters. This joke flew over every kid's head. But every working father watching in 1962 felt a chill. The future wasn't going to save them. It was going to erase them and call it progress. But the character who exposed this the most was never supposed to be on the show at all. Number 4. Rosie was a mistake, and that made her perfect. You loved Rosie. Everyone loved Rosie. The sassy robot maid with the apron and the rolling wheels who wasn't afraid to tell George when he was being ridiculous. She felt like family. But here's what Hanna-Barbera never wanted you to know. Rosie was only supposed to appear in 2 episodes. The original plan was simply to show a robot maid as a one-time gag about futuristic housework, then move on. But when those first 2 episodes aired in 1962, the audience reaction was so overwhelming that the network demanded she return. The kids loved her. Parents loved her. She became more popular than half the main cast. But there's something darker underneath. Rosie is an XB500 model, an outdated, cheap demonstrator unit. The episode where Jane rents her makes it clear that wealthier families have sleeker, fancier robots with better programming. The Jetsons can't afford a new one. Even in the future, even with all this technology, the middle class still buys refurbished. Rosie wasn't comic relief. She was a mirror. Your family had the hand-me-down TV, the used car, the good-enough appliances. Even tomorrow wouldn't fix that. And what she cleaned up was straight out of a Cold War nightmare. Number 5. The video screens that showed us 2024. Remember the first time you made a FaceTime call? Or logged into a Zoom meeting? Did you think, wait, I've seen this before? You weren't imagining it. The Jetsons did it first in 1962, before the internet, before personal computers, before cordless phones even existed. George and Jane casually video called each other from different rooms. Elroy attended school through a two-way video screen. Doctors examined patients remotely using cameras and monitors. Every single wall in Orbit City had a flat screen. This wasn't just a prediction, it was a blueprint. But here's the part they don't tell you. The idea didn't come from the writer's imagination. AT&T had debuted the picture phone prototype at the 1964 World's Fair, but the technology was already in development during the show's production. Hanna-Barbera had access to telecom company consultants who showed them what was coming. They knew video calling was real. They just put it in a cartoon so it wouldn't scare people. The future you're living in right now? Corporations planned it in the early 1960s. The Jetsons was the commercial. You were the target audience. And it worked. But the prediction that came true in your kitchen is even creepier. Number 6. The food machine that became your microwave. Jane Jetson never cooked. Not once. She walked up to a machine, pressed a button, and a full meal appeared in seconds. Thanksgiving turkey? Button. Sunday roast? Button. Even the family dog's dinner came from a machine. In 1962, this seemed like pure fantasy. Women spent hours cooking every single day. The idea of instant food was laughable. Except General Electric didn't think it was funny. They were already working on it. The first commercial microwave oven, the Radar Range, hit the market in 1967, just 5 years after the Jetsons aired. By the 1980s, every American home had one. Today we have air fryers, instant pots, meal kit deliveries, and apps that bring restaurant food to your door in under 30 minutes. Jane's Food-Araka cycle wasn't satire, it was a spoiler. But here's the twist. In early script drafts, Jane was supposed to complain that the machine made her feel useless, that automation stole her purpose as a homemaker. The network cut that line. They didn't want housewives in 1962 to feel threatened by the future they were already building. The joke wasn't the machine. It was selling it to you as liberation. And they did the same thing to your kids' education. Number 7. Elroy's classroom predicted Zoom school 60 years early. Your kids learned from home during the pandemic, staring at screens while a teacher talked through a computer. You thought it was a temporary emergency, a glitch in the system. But Elroy Jetson was already doing it in 1962. Push-button education, machine-based learning, teachers on video screen. Elroy attended Little Dipper School without ever leaving his bedroom. Homework was digital, tests were automated. The teacher was a floating head on a monitor. Every single element of remote learning existed in the Jetsons before the internet was even invented. IBM and Bell Labs were testing computer-assisted instruction programs in the early 1960s, funded by the Department of Defense. Hanna-Barbera had advisors from these companies. They knew education was being redesigned. They were experimenting with ideas that resemble what we now call remote learning. They animated it as a joke, but the corporations backing the show were deadly serious. When COVID-19 forced schools online in 2020, you thought it was an adaptation. It wasn't. It was the execution of a plan drawn up 60 years earlier. The Jetsons didn't predict Zoom school. It advertised it. And your kids are living in the beta test. But the character who made you feel safe about all this was hiding something too. Number 8. Astro the dog was copied twice. You remember Astro, the lovable, goofy space dog who talked in broken sentences and loved his family more than anything. Rutro Reorge? He made the future feel warm, safe. Like no matter how much technology changed, you'd still have something real to love. But Astro wasn't original. Not even close. Voice actor Don Messick created Astro's signature speech pattern, replacing R's with other sounds, the mushy consonants, the big-hearted dimness. Then, 7 years later in 1969, Hanna-Barbera told Messick to do the exact same voice for a new character, Scooby-Doo. Same cadence, same verbal tics, same emotional core. Astro was the prototype. Scooby was the refinement. But here's where it gets stranger. In Astro's debut episode, the family had to choose between him and Electronimo, a perfectly programmed robot dog who never made mistakes, never caused problems, never needed love. George wanted the robot. He argued for efficiency over emotion. The family voted for Astro anyway. That episode aired in 1962. Today we have robot dogs. Boston Dynamics sells them. They don't need food, don't die, don't feel. And people are starting to prefer them. Astro wasn't just a character. He was the last time we chose heart over code. But speaking of choices, the one they made about moving walkways is now everywhere you go. Number 9. The conveyor sidewalks you walk on every day. Remember the first time you stepped onto a moving walkway at an airport? That strange feeling of walking while being carried, like the ground itself was helping you move forward? You thought it was modern, efficient, smart design. The Jetsons showed it to you first in 1962. Orbit City had conveyor streets that carried people across town. No one walked normally. The ground moved, and you just stood there. Lazy? Maybe. Futuristic? Absolutely. But here's the secret. Those walkways were already real. The 1900 Paris World's Fair featured a Rue de l'Avenir, Street of the Future, a moving sidewalk that transported thousands. It failed commercially because cities didn't want to pay for infrastructure that encouraged laziness. Hanna-Barbera didn't predict moving walkways. They resurrected an abandoned idea from 60 years earlier, repackaged it as the future, and made you want it. Airports installed them in the 1970s. Now they're everywhere. The Jetsons didn't show you tomorrow. They showed you yesterday's failed experiments that corporations never stopped trying to sell you. And Jane's smart home? That's where the real control began. Number 10. Jane's voice-controlled house listens to you right now. Alexa, turn off the lights. Hey Google, set a timer. You talk to your house now. It listens. It obeys. Sometimes it activates when you don't want it to. Sometimes it records conversations you thought were private, but it's convenient, so you keep it. Jane Jetson had the exact same setup in 1962. Voice-activated vacuum cleaners, beds that made themselves on command, dishes that washed when told. Her entire house responded to spoken instructions. It looked like magic, like freedom. Here's what they didn't show. In the original script for the episode Jane's Driving Lesson, Jane's home system malfunctioned and started giving her orders instead of taking them. The vacuum chased her. The bed wouldn't let her get up. The doors locked her in. It was played for laughs, but the message was clear. Once your house starts listening, who's really in control? That scene was cut before broadcast. Network executives said it was too frightening for children. Today, Amazon admits Alexa recordings are reviewed by human workers. Google Home devices have been caught activating without the wake word. Your smart home isn't serving you, it's studying you. Jane tried to warn us. They cut her warning. But nothing they predicted matters compared to what they got completely wrong. Number 11. The 3 predictions that failed and why that's terrifying. The Jetsons got flying cars wrong. We don't have them. They got the 3-hour workday wrong. We work longer than ever. They got the part about humans being happy wrong. We're more anxious, more medicated, more depressed than any generation in history. But here's the disturbing part. We got all the technology. Video calls, check. Smart homes, check. Robots, check. Instant food, check. We built everything the Jetsons promised, except the one thing that mattered, happiness. In 1962, futurists genuinely believed technology would free humanity from suffering, automate the labor, eliminate the struggle, and humans would finally be content. The Jetsons was that promise animated. George complains, but he's not actually suffering. He has everything. His life is easy. We have the same technology now, and we're miserable. The show didn't predict the future wrong. It predicted the technology perfectly, and the human experience completely backward. We built Orbit City and discovered that convenience doesn't equal joy. that automation doesn't equal purpose, that having everything doesn't mean feeling fulfilled. The Jetsons wasn't a failed prediction. It was a warning we ignored. We built their world and forgot to build their happiness. And the moment we realized that, something impossible happened. Number 12. When the theme song became a hit 24 years after cancellation. In 1986, Ronald Reagan was president. MTV is king. Madonna and Huey Lewis dominate the radio. And somehow, impossibly, a 24-year-old cartoon theme song climbs to number 9 on the Billboard charts. Meet George Jetson wasn't supposed to be a single. Hoyt Curtin wrote it in 1962 as opening credits music. It never charted. It was never meant to. But in 1985, a compilation album called Television's Greatest Hits included the Jetsons theme, and something bizarre happened. Radio stations started playing it, not as a joke, not as nostalgia, as an actual song. Request lines exploded. DJs couldn't escape it. So the studio re-recorded it in stereo and released it as a single. It sold hundreds of thousands of copies. Curtin, the composer, was stunned. "I wrote that in an afternoon," he said. "I never imagined." But here's why it worked. By 1986, America realized the future wasn't coming. The hope of the 1960s was dead. And hearing that bouncy, optimistic jingle again felt like visiting a grave for something we used to believe. The song wasn't a hit. It was a eulogy. But the strangest thing the show ever did was bringing back the past. Number 13. When the Jetsons met the Flintstones and proved time is a circle. November 15, 1987. Hanna-Barbera did the impossible. They made the Jetsons meet the Flintstones. Stone Age and Space Age, past and future. It should have been nonsense. Instead, it became canon. Elroy builds a time machine. Astro wags his tail and accidentally hits the past button. The family crashes in bedrock and meets Fred and Barney, who just got fired from their jobs. Later, the Flintstones travel forward to Orbit City. Both families realize they're living the same struggles: bad bosses, money problems, family chaos separated by a million years. But the special included one line that changed everything. The past and future are closer than you think. A throwaway gag? No, a confession. Fans had joked for years that the Flintstones were living on the ruined surface after humanity fled upward. This special confirmed it. The two shows exist in the same timeline. The Flintstones are the survivors below. The Jetsons are the ones who escaped above. Your childhood wasn't two separate cartoons. It was one story about class, survival, and who gets to live in the sky while others claw through the dirt below. But the biggest secret wasn't about the future at all. Number 14. The Jetsons was just Blondie in space, and you never noticed. Everything you believed about the Jetsons is a lie. It wasn't original. It wasn't visionary. It was a 1930s comic strip repackaged with flying cars. Blondie Bumstead, the sweet, capable housewife married to Dagwood, the bumbling husband who constantly screwed up and got yelled at by his boss, Mr. Dithers. That comic strip ran in newspapers from 1930 onward. It became 28 movies, a radio show, and a cultural institution. Hanna-Barbera didn't create the Jetsons. They reskinned Blondie. George is Dagwood. Jane is Blondie. Mr. Spacely is Mr. Dithers. Same personalities, same conflicts, same punchlines. And to make absolutely sure audiences understood, they cast Penny Singleton, who played Blondie in all 28 films, as the voice of Jane Jetson. It wasn't subtle. It was shameless. The Jetsons wasn't about the future. It was about repackaging the comfortable past with a space-age coat of paint. Audiences in 1962 heard Blondie's voice and felt safe. The future wasn't scary if it was just the 1930s with robots. If the Flintstones was the honeymooners in the Stone Age, the Jetsons was Blondie in space. Everything you thought was new was just recycled comfort food. And that's exactly why it died so fast. Number 15. Why the Jetsons only lasted one season, and what that means for us. One season, 24 episodes, canceled in 1963. The show that defined the future couldn't survive a full year on television. Why? Because America in 1962 didn't want the future. They wanted to feel safe. The country was terrified. Cuban Missile Crisis, nuclear drills in schools. The Cold War turned hot. President Kennedy promised the moon, while Khrushchev threatened annihilation. The last thing people wanted was a show reminding them that tomorrow was uncertain. The Jetsons failed because it asked Americans to believe in a future they weren't sure they'd live to see. The Flintstones succeeded because it let them hide in the past. But here's the truly haunting part. The show was resurrected in 1985 during Ronald Reagan's Morning in America. The Cold War was thawing, the economy was booming, optimism was back, and suddenly, the Jetsons weren't scary anymore. It was comforting. The revival produced 75 new episodes and became a massive hit. The same show, different era, different reactions. Which brings us back to today. Why are you watching this video? Because the Jetsons feel distant again. The future promised happiness, ease, and hope feels further away than ever. We built Orbit City, and it didn't save us. We're living in the future, and we've never felt more trapped in the past. So which scene do you like most? George's sky commute that never happened? Rosie's sass? Astro's loyalty? And here's the final question. Were these predictions correct or wrong? The answer is both. They got the technology right and humanity wrong. We built the future. We just forgot to build happiness. Drop a comment and tell me, what did the Jetsons get right about your life today? And what did it get painfully, terrifyingly wrong? Subscribe for more hidden truths about the shows that shaped us.